Hi, I'm Andy Cooke. I am Tam's husband and business partner in Discern, where we do things like coaching and training and consulting of various kinds. And, I'll be in the podcast today. I look forward to you hearing me.
You talked about getting up, going in the sun, having a cup of tea, breakfast, and having your ADHD drugs. And we discussed prior to this interview having a little bit of a chat about ADHD, and we wanted to put a strong disclaimer around, certainly for me, but also for you. We're not experts in ADHD. We just wanted to talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting topic for me as your wife to have watched the process of you being diagnosed and treated, but also as a subject, where I had, like my mum said to me yesterday, the day before, has everyone got ADHD now? Like people are just getting diagnosed one after the other.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of checking if I've got it because a couple of friends said to me, I think you've got ADHD. And I said, do I? And they go, I think so.
Yeah, well, I mean, to put me aside for a moment and kind of just keep it in the safe intellectual sphere,
Yes.
I think actually that is, there are a couple of things really with that, right? One of them is that I think it's a little bit like we say with a lot of psychological conditions, and in a way that I think that people who are really suffering would probably suffer more as a result of, which is, aren't we all kind of on the spectrum? When someone's got serious bipolar disorder and someone says, yes, I get a bit moody sometimes, like they're part of the same, thing. I think, though, that it's fair to say that, and again, we talk about this stuff, when we're talking about meditation and why it's worthwhile and in other kinds of training around focus, is that human beings by nature are evolved to be many of the things that we recognize as being part of the ADHD thing, right? Like being naturally distractible. So, I feel like in literally the last 24 hours I was telling the story, if you imagine our favourite hunter-gatherers, Stig and Miranda, and they're stood around a fruit tree with gorgeous glistening berries and fruit, and you're not, if you are either Stig or Miranda, surrounded by potential predators that could eat you at any moment, gonna fully focus on the deliciousness of the fruit and the droplets of water on it, and how the light from the morning sun is filtering through the leaves or anything like that, because you've got to be on the lookout for whether or not there's some shit coming at you with sharp teeth. So it makes really a lot of sense that just as a species, period, we would be distractible, right? That we would be hard for us to maintain focus. And then, of course, you've got a designed world that is just really preying on that truth, right?
Yeah.
So that we're all surrounded by screens and things that go ping and social media and YouTube and you name it, and desktop notifications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on.
Yeah.
So all of that is to say, you were saying, your mum was saying, it seems like everyone's got ADHD. I think to an extent, in the way that I've just described, that's true, right? And then it's a matter of degree.
Yes.
You've got the DSM-5 telling you if you've got this many ticks in this many boxes, then you classify as being someone who can get help with this thing.
I think that's right. I think the environment we live in now is very prone to exacerbating or even creating the problem. This, as we've said, is a non-expert opinion.
Yeah.
But when I think about someone having said to me, I think you might have it. If I think of me as a child versus you as a child, it was almost polar opposite, right?
Yep.
So if I think about the impact of this particular thing on different people and where it has come from and how long it has been in play, and the benefit of getting treatment in whatever that looks like is going to be different for different people. Right?
Yeah.
And this is where we'll talk about as much or as little as you want to in your experience. But do you want to give whatever you're comfortable with, a summary of when you realised it may be an issue, our interaction around that, you getting it resolved?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm happy to, because, you never know who might be listening that might be considering this kind of stuff, and they might want to see whether any of it matches. And, of course, people will have different experiences. But my particular experience... So, growing up at school, probably the most common sort of statement from most of my teachers was, it seems like he has really great potential. Well, that's a deadly word, potential, right? If only, I don't know what the words that followed that were, if only he would apply himself, or if only he would actually hand in his coursework, I don't know. But like, there was an awful lot of, I did a lot of, if I was in class, I was a good contributor, right? If it was verbal and didn't need to be written down, then I could really engage, and I often had clever things to say, and my teachers liked the stuff that I brought up and so on. But when I had to then go away and put my mind to, and my pen to paper and capture stuff, there was a whole raft of stuff going on there. It wasn't just ADHD, you know, like as we've already established, I was over analytical, and, you know, I probably had a level of anxiety around stuff, and I worried about, you know, things being made real so they could actually be judged, so that, you know, people could find out actually that the potential they thought I had, I didn't have, and, you know, all of that imposter syndrome stuff. So there's a whole conflagration of stuff. But what I can say is that I definitely had a number of occasions where I just found it hard to get going because I found it hard to maintain focus. And the way that showed up much more, though, is, I think, in my younger adult life and my adult life more broadly. The thing I think that for us in our conversations years ago really triggered thinking, should I maybe go and speak to someone professionally about this, is when I was describing one of the experiences that I had regularly had for years and years and years, and you said, "Oh wow, that's like almost a word for word dead ringer for the things that your friend, who I will not name at this point because we've not got her permission to say so, but your friend who had a diagnosis, and you were saying, oh wow, that's exactly what she said." So the thing was, I have a whole ton of ideas, a lot of them very good, and I've got lots of things that I could be / should be working on, and I can go through, or could go, still do occasionally, go through paroxysms of anxiety over which thing to do and what to settle on and what to get started on. And I'd get started with one thing, and then I'd think, oh, is this the right thing that I should be working on right now? And then I'd jump across to something else, and so on and so forth. So on one end of the spectrum, the challenge is this business of getting into focus. And then the other end of it that you've experienced many a time is the getting out of focus. I was trying to think, actually, because I knew we were going to be talking about this today. I was trying to think about how you could encapsulate this in a phrase, and I still don't have it. But it's something like sticky focus, right? Like, it's hard to get it onto the thing. It's maybe like a magnet or something. I don't know. We can come up with an analogy together later. But it's like it's hard to get it to get onto something. But when you do, and it's fully adhered, it's actually then very hard to get it back off again. So that's the other end of it for me, is that I would start work on something, and then I would go down a rabbit hole, right? Like a research rabbit hole, let's say, and then I would be there for hours. And that's the other feature, is a level of time blindness, and sort of going, oh, I'll just do this for 5 minutes. Then you wake up, quote marks, 2 hours later, and you realise you've wasted a whole lot of time, and then in comes the anxiety and this, you know, the self-recrimination, and so it's all sort of combined together. But those, I think, really are the major things. It's the lots of stuff, like having this cloud of ideas, cloud of thoughts, cloud of self-suggestions of things that you want to do, good intentions. You know, if only you could just dedicate yourself, you get this stuff done, then finding it very hard to know which thing to commit to. And then once you've committed, getting distracted, and then getting really focused on the thing that you're distracted about. Highly ironic. So that's the bad news version, right? That was the experience that I was having, that I was describing to you, that I was, you know, living through and did for many, many years. And then you said, you should go and speak to so-and-so. And then I resisted and resisted and resisted, mainly because I knew that was a path down which, if I walked, the other end would be either therapy of some kind, which I'm not averse to, but I in my heart of hearts, believe was going to actually solve my problem, or the thing that actually has, in part, solved my problem, which is medication, right? And I don't think my mum will mind me saying this, but I come from a family with a mother who can have, a headache that barely makes her able to function and still refuses to take Panadol for at least a couple of hours because she has to wait for it to get bad enough before she'll do that. And so I didn't have a very open view of the benefit of taking the right kinds of medications under the right circumstances. You've dealt with all manner of frustration over, trying to get me to just take something that will help me solve a problem. And in particular, of course, having studied psychology and having been made aware of the fragile nature of the human brain and its balance, in the sense of, you can mess with neurochemistry and then it can continue to be messed with by the messing, as it were. I'd always had a resistance to the idea that I could take drugs to try and help this problem. But eventually we got there, right? I went along to my professional friend, who I also won't name. But, there's several out there. Went to a psychiatrist, did the DSM-5, had a disappointing experience, actually. Because I fully expected I was going to be sitting in there for an hour on a leather couch, lying down, talking about my relationship with various people, including my mother. None of that happened.
Nothing.
Just sat me down in front of the questionnaire for the DSM-5. Are you this? Do you have that? Do you do this? Do you do this? And then, the enough ticks in enough boxes. I found that I didn't have the hyperactive end of the ADHD, which I think gets called different things these days depending on who's talking about it. But I don't have the H bit, but I definitely have the attention deficit bit. And so then we started me on dexamphetamine, tiny, infinitesimally small dose. So I take 5 milligrams each day, but in 2 half pills that I have to chop in half every morning. And it actually really has made a substantial difference.
What have you noticed have been the biggest differences from being the person themselves?
I don't know how to really encapsulate it, but I think probably the difference that I see is in looking back at things I do and have done, and a lack of pain in getting them done. So I haven't revolutionized as a person. Like, I haven't become a different person. I haven't solved all my problems. I don't not get anxious about things. I don't not overanalyze things. But I do just an increment more, and a very important increment, just get on with stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just get on with stuff. And I find it a little easier to go, well, look, there's 50 things here that you could do, but you're not going to know which one is the most useful thing to do. And frankly, even if you could replay time over and over, there would probably be 8 or 9 different things that would be a good thing to do right now. So just freaking get on with one of them. And I think that piece that the Dexies give you of like just having a dopamine drive that just has you want to just do is the thing that made the difference for me, is that I'll just sit down and do stuff, or stand up and do stuff.
Yeah.
And then because, I've developed various skills and I've learned a lot over the years and so on, now I can kind of make the most of a lot of those skills in a way that doesn't get messed with by the flibbity-gibbetness that I was experiencing in the preceding years.
Yeah, that makes sense, that you've sort of got this, cause the way that my friend described the clearing, it was the noise in my head is quietened and I can get on with what I actually want to get on with. For me as your wife, the thing that I noticed most was you taking action instead of planning to take action.
Yes.
And in a very complex way. So one of the things that you used to say prior to this was you'd say we need a system, and it got to the point where I said I've got a peanut allergy around the word system, partly because of my own issues, right, not wanting detail, but partly because there was always a plan that would not be enacted, you know.
And highly complex.
Highly
It's definitely
complex.
a lesson that I've learned now, painfully relearned over and over in the years, is that that tendency to think, if only I can just dot all of the I's and cross all the T's and have everything in the right boxes, then somehow this thing will be. But the reality is, the system is only as good as the taking of action within that system, right? And I think, actually, to be honest, in many ways, I would end up making systems that were so bloody complicated that freaking no one would do it.
No one would be able to do it. So that was one element, and I definitely think you've got the get-going thing now. The other element, which I'm not sure has been as obvious to you as the actual person, but the level, you're still a self-critical person like I am and a lot of people are, but it's less vicious than it was. So the level of viciousness was really untenably high and terrible to watch. And I feel like, and I didn't even know it was a part of it. It wasn't until someone else very close to me got diagnosed and treated that I learned that self-recrimination, self-hatred, self-criticism is a very strong attribute of people with ADHD. I had no idea it could be helped by either therapy or medication.
Shame. I think shame's a really big element. And this is another interesting one for me, right? So, over the years now, since my diagnosis, I always feel like a total wanker when I say those words. I don't know why.
Since your diagnosis, like my truth. Like our friend in Peru, it's my truth. I think it was your diagnosis.
Well, it is. It is, yes. Like, that's the correct term for it. It just sounds wanky to say it that way, my diagnosis, like it's something I own,
You
my
could say since I was diagnosed.
Yes, since I was diagnosed, right? So since I was diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, I've wanted to try and make sure that, if there are people out there that might be suffering in a similar way, that I can help them out. And the most direct way that shows up is when I'm working one-on-one with coachees and we talk about stuff and they describe things and I go, click, 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 that all of that sounds like. And I'm always very, very careful to remind them that, A, I'm not a professional in this area, and B, whilst I might be projecting and all that sort of stuff, but, it's not at all uncommon that they've thought about it already themselves. But one of the things that comes up in a lot of those conversations is this piece, generally not raised explicitly, but it shows up very obviously around shame. And there's two things with that. One, I think the shame comes into play because a lot of the things that ADD gets in the way of are things that socially really don't do well. So, this business of having a time challenge, it's so here's an example that anyone who has the same challenge will recognize. So if I have an important appointment of some kind at 3:30 in the afternoon on a particular day, but a whole bunch of other things that need to happen in open space where there's no particular requirement for you to do them, there's a range of things that I could be doing. If I've got that appointment, there's a bit of my brain off the drugs that goes, well, you can't really do anything else because you've got that appointment at 2:30. Despite the fact that there's like 6 or 7 hours of time in between. There's just something about that idea of like this pressing thing. I don't know whether that'll resonate with anyone. But then the other thing is like, maybe we've got an hour until we have to leave to go somewhere. And, it used to be very much that I would look at the watch and go, oh yeah, I've got time. That's not now. That's not now. So I don't, that's fine. I've got time. I've got time. Oh, I haven't got time, right?
Yeah.
But if you put those together and you think about the kinds of things that trigger shame, like shame. I was watching an interesting interview with a person who's a sociopath a little while ago, and they were talking about this, and I think it's a really good point. There's a whole bunch of different emotions that we have, right? Fear, anger, disgust. Many of them are really just fundamental, right? You'll see them in every animal, in every human, no matter the culture. But things like shame and regret and guilt, those are the social emotions. They're the ones that our culture gives us, right? Because you feel shame because you're doing or failing to do something that might affect other people or that are breaking some sort of cultural rule, right? So having established that, I don't know really why I need to get into that distinction, but having established that, one of the challenges with, if you have poor time management because you've got ADD and you have that whole, I've got time thing, over and over again, you would be letting people down. Over and over again, you're rocking up and making excuses about the traffic and having to roll out some story that justifies your actions. And and then knowing that that's not true, and knowing that they probably know it's not true, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there, and that's got a cumulative effect, right? So on one hand, you've got the shame factor that comes from having this incapacity, or at least an impediment, and then the other piece that I found talking to a lot of my coachees who are considering the fact that they might have ADHD but are reluctant to head towards taking medication is the shame of, I don't want to take meds because then I'll feel like I'm cheating and I haven't been able to solve the problem myself.
Yes.
If only I could try hard enough, then I can conquer this thing.
Yes, it's almost. So I had exactly the same thing happen when I was treated for depression many years ago, and my then boyfriend said to me, when I said exactly what you just said, I'll sort it out myself. He said, how long have you tried to sort it out yourself for? And I said, I don't know, several years. By that stage, probably 10 or more years. He said, is that a very loving decision for yourself? And whatever else, I'm grateful for that relationship, for that sentence, because it allowed me to go, oh, I have been saying I need to do this myself. I'll get there. And actually, is that loving? No, but not even from a loving standpoint, just from a logical standpoint. How's that going for you?
Yeah.
How's that working out?
It's so, for me, I like to mess with it when I can, if I can do so gently with some of the people I talk to, because a lot of these people are super smart, really accomplished individuals who refuse to reduce the pain in their lives on the basis of not cheating or not, not admitting failure.
Yes.
Right? Exactly as I did. That it's absurdly illogical, because the idea that if you're taking a medication, that's going to help you change your brain chemistry in such a way that certain things will prove to be easier. Like, okay, so you've never drunk coffee then. You've never had alcohol in a social situation. You've never, I don't know, had a good night's sleep. You've never eaten healthy food. Like, all of these things have a bearing on brain chemistry.
Yes.
You're doing a lot of those, hopefully, right? So the only difference is that one of them is being, manufactured in a plant somewhere that makes such things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's different ethics attached to different things. I actually saw a post by a fellow that's promoting himself as he's a doctor, but promoting himself as a wellness expert online. And I saw this post yesterday, and it was largely good. It talked about options other than drugs for treating certain things. And of course it made, one of the examples it had was around exercise for reducing depression, and how people are too often prescribed SSRIs instead of being told to go for a walk.
Yeah.
So I had a level of upset at that, because whilst it's accurate to say it, if you had said to me in my worst times, just go for a little toddle, I couldn't get out of the bed, let alone go for a little toddle.
Yeah.
So for me, it shows a lack of understanding or empathy in regards to people are, I believe, always doing their best, even if it doesn't look like they are. And whilst one could argue that could be a better decision if you can do it, to say, okay, I'm going to exercise rather than take this particular thing. At the time when that then boyfriend said, are you being loving? I couldn't be exercising more. I was literally working in hospitality, running around restaurants. I was stick thin. I wasn't eating very well because I was in Scotland, so.
Yeah.
But that wasn't something I had a lot of control over. But apart from that, I couldn't have been moving more, right?
Yeah.
And I still had the emotional experience I had. I literally had a breakthrough around what stops me walking a fortnight ago in coaching.
Yes.
So if I had waited for that breakthrough to then agree with this post, I would have lost 25 years, literally lost 25 years of greater stability and happiness and ease.
Yeah,
nothing.
I don't want to call anyone silly for making decisions based on this stuff, but taken in isolation, it is kind of silly. It's like saying, I don't want to, I want to have wooden wheels on my car because that's it's more authentically Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a crappy
It's not
analogy,
actually
but you know
that
what I'm
bad. It's
saying.
not that bad in terms of knowing, well, hang on. It's like, if you know, like you gave the example, if you've got a headache and I say, just have a Panadol,
Yeah.
you know, of course, I skew the other way because I come from a pharmaceutical
Yeah.
background. I tend to be more pro these things, and I understand a lot of people aren't, and I understand why. And
That
I think it's
Panadol, honey, is the thin end of the wedge. Today, Panadol.
tomorrow H.
Tomorrow, H. That's right. Tomorrow you're in a club with a long coat. There's a callback for you.
But it's a perfect
Can
example,
I say
right?
something though? Because it occurred to me while you were just talking before, and you know that this is a real hobby horse of mine. The problem that I have here is that it's just another of the 68,000 examples of binary thinking.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where people love to simplify, and so it's either this or that, right? Either you know, go with the healthy lifestyle and the exercise and the seeing daylight and blah, 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 or you take drugs like a cheat.
Sitting in a cave.
Which is bullshit.
And watching
right?
daytime TV.
Why on earth would it have to be one or the other, right? But we love to do that. We love to polarize things. We just do it left, right, and centre with everything: political stuff, freaking religious stuff, the way to live your life, whether to take drugs or not, etc., etc. It's absurd.
It gets easier the more you practice not being polar, but I have so understood why people do it, because I've sat in the middle of so many different things and felt the discomfort of not being on a side.
Yeah.
So much easier to just be on a side and be basic and be monkey-like and go, yeah, you suck, we win. I get why people don't want to. But I must say, Danielle and I have talked about this months and months and months ago, and as I sit here now, having continued to practice with your help, being less tribal, sitting in the unknown, sitting in the middle, it gets easier to be there. Because as I say it now, when she and I spoke about it months ago, I was actively in the discomfort of just wanting to pick a side and have the comfort.
Yeah.
But now, because I've been unwilling to do that and I've stayed in the middle, I'm much more comfortable at looking at a particular viewpoint with much greater compassion for them, myself, everything else, and go, there's something in that. So I used to be, there's nothing in that, right? I was much more tribal. I'm even trying with the footy to be less.
Wow.
Oh, it's so hard. So we've got beloved friends that go for the Dockers, and we used to have issues in our relationship because I was so terrible about the Dockers. And then I realised I was really hurting their feelings, particularly one of the two of them. So one day when I'd been drinking, I rang up and apologised, left a message. I'm so sorry. I've realised like that. But I meant it, but it took the alcohol to get there. Anyway, so I ring and leave this message. I'm not going to be so vicious anymore. Then I try and go to the next level, and I go, not only am I not going to be vicious, I'm actually going to try and support your team unless they're playing us. So I tried to act that out. Ooh, couldn't really get there.
Baby steps.
It was too far.
Yeah.
It was too far. I felt kind of a nausea. I felt it was
unsteady on your feet.
It was too far. I might be able to get there. I've reduced the hatred to a kind of unpleasant neutrality. That's better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
it's good.
like good luck, like that. Good luck.
Jolly good show.
Wonderful. But it's not a love affair. I'm trying to... Do you know when I had Carly on here, Carly Lyon, I told her about my A Spark Can Grow But Repulsion Is Forever.
Oh, yeah,
she liked it.
Oh, you've got one.
And a good one.
She's got a good reach.
She's got a good reach. She's got a good reputation. She's a wonderful woman.
Fantastic.
Maybe I just need quality people to hear my sayings, and then they'll be on T-shirts everywhere.
Yep.
I do want that on a T-shirt.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a good analogy for this, because the spark could grow, but there was no spark. There was very strong repulsion. Still talking about footy.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You think I was talking about you?
Well, I mean...
Can you imagine? Something I want to tell you, hun.
Yes.
No, it's like with the footy. Like, it was a very strong hatred, so I haven't been able to go to in love. I've been able to go to...
Got it.
I accept that you exist.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Okay, yeah.
So tribal, binary. There's a whole other thing I want to talk about, but I don't know about you. I feel like we might have to do a revisit. It's around the success. Depends on your energy and how long we've been going for.
Man, I can go for days.
You can. I need to check with Grayson what his timing likes for today. So we're coming up to 2:30, Grayson, and we're meant to have a production meeting at 2:30. And then were you planning on escaping after that? Yeah, I was. That was a yes, I was, with a polite, So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, which we can talk about now or come back and talk about, is I think what would be very useful to talk about, it's somewhat connected to the ADHD or ADD, but not really. It probably came out of your freedom that you started doing this, however you want to call it, atomic habits, like you said, incremental, being about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
I feel like there's really useful stuff you can tell people here in the way that I talk about people do, where you used to do X, Y, and Z, now you do another. You said, I feel like I've slipped back a bit, but you are a very self-harsh critic. I've still seen you doing a lot of stuff. Do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to come back another time and talk about it?
Yeah, let's see if I can do it justice in the limited time. How long have I got?
Well, let's see if you can talk about it in 15 or 20 minutes max.
Start the clock.
Okay, go.
So, how to start?
Well,
stalactite.
Okay, go.
Do you remember years ago we had that
Yes.
business crowd that we went to, and I said what I was asked what my word for the year was
Year
going to be,
was,
and I
yes.
said stalactite, and I was being quite wanky there as well, and I was saying, well, like these massive things that hold on to the roofs of caves and are huge and very impressive have grown very, 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 very slowly over time by virtue of deposits of whatever material is that they deposit. I don't pretend to be an expert. And that was the analogy, right? It was this idea that, most of what is achieved by really any individual in life is done in small increments. We just don't tend to look at it that way because we're in love with the big leap, right? It's it's of a piece, I think, with this business of like how we love to have singular heroes as well. If you look at scientific discoveries, they're always going to try and point at one person who's like, happened across this amazing thing, forgetting about the 80,000 other people who've done incremental little pieces that they relied on to be able to make the leap that they made, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's the concept. And in day-to-day life, the problem with my medicated ADHD brain is that I really lent into that piece of I have to have all the ducks in a row. I have to have all the pieces in place before I can make the leap. But also, when I decide I want to do something, I would want it to be too big a chunk, too big a bite, essentially. Again, if I can go back and steal from my experiences with my coachees, often when I'll discuss something with someone and say, okay, right, we've identified this is an area that you want to work on. Let's set a goal. What do you think? What do you think you should do in the month between now and when I next see you? And 9 times out of 10, I mean, really almost 10 times out of 10, the person will reach too far when it comes to what they could actually feasibly get done in a month, where they're going to be still working and doing all the other things that they're doing. And so, that's the thing. It's going, okay, what is the one tiniest little thing that I can do towards whatever goal or whatever thing it is that I'm trying to achieve? And how can I then build that into a daily practice? That means that for a tiny fragment of time, I'm putting attention and energy into that thing so that it builds cumulatively over time. And so the example that you would probably reach for is this is a weird tangent, but my Asian squat efforts, right? So somewhere along the line in one of my long YouTube watching sessions, I came across the fact that, as an aging person, and I'm not that old, but in my 50s, as I head towards the second half of my life, one of the things that might be useful is to be able to have kind of hip flexibility and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people made a big song and dance about how important it was to be able to do a deep squat, and some people call it an Asian squat, some people call it I think it has all sorts of names. I think it's like Latvian squat, and lots of different countries have claimed it. But anyway, basically, can you have flat feet on the ground with your bum on your heels, essentially, and then sit there stably? Absolutely not. Could not do that at all. But I thought that might be an interesting thing to try for. And so I committed myself to a daily practice, a daily goal at some point in the day. I was very loosey-goosey about it, of being in a squat for 2 minutes. That's it. And then I got myself an app that let me track it and so on. And the trigger was 9 times out of 10 when I realised that it was bedtime and I hadn't done it for the day. And so I'd be doing it, in the dark, hanging for dear life to the dining room table so I didn't fall over backwards, because that's all I could do at that point. And then just gradually just did it. And the phrase that I like about this, that I heard from someone, I don't know who, so I can't credit them, was having it be about input, not output. So you do the thing. You don't worry about whether you're making progress. You don't worry about whether you can see anything changing. You just do it. And then, of course, you do see things changing. So I now can do a full...
I know.
Yeah, you see me do it
I know.
on a regular basis, and it only took a couple of months.
Well, it was actually pretty fast, wasn't it?
Yeah, relatively fast.
Yeah.
And, like I've got new goals now. Want to do a trigger squat. Is that what they call it? I think that's what it's called.
Is that where one leg's out the front?
Pistol squat. Yeah, I think it's a pistol squat. Yeah, where you squat down on one leg and you've got the other one sticking out in front of you. That one's impressive.
You're going to end up on daily dose.
But
then you have to do that plus juggle plus be on fire.
That's right.
Because you know how we've learned now.
Wing compilation.
You have to do 2 to 3 skills all at once
it's
now.
It's no good to be a tightrope walker anymore.
No way. That sucks.
Yeah, you have
what
to
else are you doing while you're up there?
Make a cappuccino and yeah. That's
so
right.
now you're on to next things, because I see you next to the bed, and I was trying to tell you last night that you looked like that 80s aerobics show which had John Travolta and I think it was Jamie Lee Curtis, and they were doing like aerobics with the high
pelvic
V.
thrust.
Yeah, and they were doing the full pelvic thrust.
You're really painting a picture now, hon.
Yeah, but you kept saying, I said, it's got John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis, and you were going Pulp Fiction. I'm like, it's not Pulp Fiction. They were in aerobics 80s gear. And I said, it's not Pulp Fiction. Stop saying Pulp Fiction. I'll find out which show it was. But yeah, it's certainly a look. But that's not the point. The point is that you've started on to whatever's the next.
Yeah.
And then you helped me, because of course I've got knees that don't work that really need to be replaced, but we're trying to figure out if I can sort of support the muscle around them to avoid such a dramatic thing. And of course I've done all sorts of different things, including going to the gym and done different diets and done different exercises, and ended up dropping all of them, right? And you said, I want you to get on the exercise bike for 30 seconds a day. And I was like, oh my God, what is 30 seconds going to do? And then after a couple of weeks we did a minute, or a week after that we did a minute. Now we're doing a minute at a higher tension. Right. I'm ready for what's next, actually. But I've
already put you into the half Ironman. So yeah.
So we're taking it from an incremental to, can you imagine? But the thing that I have noticed from doing it is that if what it's meant to do is have it become something you do without emotional pain or resistance, then that is working.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's the other piece. So I notice actually as I talk about this stuff, there's like key phrases that sometimes really click for me. I don't know whether this is the same for other people. Like that whole input, not output thing. Like I use that as a sort of a touchstone. And another one that now I've lost, but we'll get back in just a moment. Make some noises while I'm trying to think what it was.
So input versus output. I said getting me to do it for such a short period if the idea is that it gets you into the habit without painful resistance.
Yeah, okay, good. So it's not quite such a catchy phrase, but the thing that we end up doing is the thing that we notice ourselves doing often enough that it kind of becomes part of our identity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll have to shorten that if I want to really make it into a catchphrase. But I think that's the thing. A lot of the time, a lot of stuff is identity driven, right? Like I think we've established this, we being the world at large, the self-help community, right? We know that if you identify as being a certain thing or having a certain thing, that you're more likely to do it. But the bit that doesn't really work is to just go, I am a person who can do pistol squats. Like it's not you can't just sort of affirmation in the mirror your way to these things.
Yes.
But what you can do is you can do something that's on the path to that thing that you want, and do it often enough with the whole input not output thing that you notice, oh, there's this thing that I do. And then that kind of at an unconscious level becomes a self-identity.
Got it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's the difference between one argument against affirmations is your brain will argue if it doesn't believe it to be true, right? Because you'll go, I'm the most beautiful princess in the whole world. And then your brain goes, you are not the most beautiful princess in the whole world. So it clashes.
And it gets loud too.
Oh, of course. You know. It's very upsetting. You know, you leave the movie, look in the mirror and realise you're not Julia Roberts. It's happened to me a lot.
It sucks.
So that affirmation's going to get argued with. Whereas, like you said, if you're sneakily doing something where 6 or months down the track or 12 months down the track, you've been riding the bike for the whole year, you've kind of snuck it in under your ego, like, you know, like you actually now are a bike rider or a walker or whatever it might be.
And the key is that it's such a tiny thing that it would be ridiculous not to just do it.
Yeah, and for me, it's getting over the fact, but that's not going to do anything. The only thing that had me agree with you is having so many stops and starts. I thought, well, I've done that. I better try something else. And, you know, having to feel the patience of this isn't instantly going to do anything, but I've done the stuff that supposedly is instantly going to do something. It does for a period of time. And then, of course, it stops because it's too much, or I don't believe it about myself or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good. I wanted to do 2 final things. One was, you know, we've been doing this wonderful work at Discern. It's become more and more about the work you've done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Namaste. And you've been doing... Namaste. And that... What I wanted to ask you was, as you're doing more and more work that's more and more interesting to you, if people who work with us watch it or listen to us and think, oh, I could work with Andy at Discern or Tam or whoever, what kind of work are you most enjoying at the moment? Like what would you manifest in terms of what kind of work people are doing with you or could do with you? You know, you don't have to drop names as to who we currently work with, but...
No, I won't again because I haven't asked anyone's permission.
Yeah.
But look, to be honest, probably in the last couple of years, the stuff that's given me the biggest kicks is the stuff that I've worked in many instances quite collaboratively with other people to try and design programs that at least go some way to achieving the things that they say that they want to achieve before we get started. And the thing that's a bit of a revelation for me about that is that I am a control freak and I am not a collaborator.
Yeah.
You know this about me.
I do.
And so the idea that I could go and have a meeting or several meetings in some cases with a client where they have opinions about things. I don't just quietly say in my head, whatever it is that I would say, and just kind of quietly ignore them and then do my own thing, which is really probably more my MO some years
historically
back. It's great. Like that's a revelation for me, and turns out pretty awesome, good fun. Right? You find the right people. I think that's the key. You can't just
like
have
dating.
someone who doesn't care and doesn't see the value. But once you've found the right people to collaborate with, that's been really good. So I really like that.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that I'm enjoying is just thinking about how the brain works and what our preferences are. And, you know, I ran a really satisfying session for a mob of auditors a few months back that I think probably of all the people in the room, I was the one who was enjoying it the most. But but it was about this business of our tendency towards heuristics or mental shortcuts, one of which is binary thinking.
Yes.
And what to do about that and how to get better at working with a brain that was always going to want to do that kind of stuff, but what you can do about it, which is, I think, you know, it's a big thing.
Yeah,
right?
the thing that I've noticed you've been enjoying, you've definitely been enjoying me doing less training because you don't have to control the outcome, right? Because otherwise, if you're setting me free, you're like, what's going to happen here? Now, of course, the outcome has generally been very good, right? But you do like having the control. And when it's with the client collaboration, that's different than collaborating with me, right?
That's true.
you still have ownership of the outcome. So that works. So you like collaborating. I think you like ongoing projects that make the biggest difference. You've been doing more within organisations, development work with teams, facilitated sessions, things that build onto one another.
Yeah.
You've been doing
And the
standalone
coaching work.
coaching. You still do a lot of good standalone training, think on your feet and other courses. But the thing I've noticed is, like I said, it's like dating. If you meet the right client that is a good match for discerned values and for what you can provide, then you like to do ongoing work that makes the biggest difference within the organisation
And
collaboratively.
it's great, right? Because the one thing that we lack, that any small business person lacks really in many cases, particularly when they're as tiny a business as ours, is that whole like office camaraderie, see the same people on a regular basis, have the jokes that are repetitive, etc., etc. Because you're like, as we've said in the past, you know, with some of the work we've done way back, you know, you kind of feel like a stripper. You know, you rock up with all your equipment, you do your thing. People have an experience of whatever kind. And then you leave, and then that's
right.
it's over. No one ever sees you ever again.
Yeah.
So now that I've got this set up where I can, have all of that, that's very nice. It's a nice thing to be able to get.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was a very interesting conversation. We'll probably break this one up into a couple of different segments. Yeah, because I think we could do the ADHD as standalone. It'd be very interesting for people who are interested in that, and then hobble together the other interesting bits we talked about.
Nice.
But yeah, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it, and love you.
I'll see you at lunch.
Like what you heard? Like and subscribe.